Good morning, Friday morning, Bonington. A wee look at the waterfall before I start my walk, or continuing my walk, rather. What a fine morning. Absolutely glorious. Just having a wee chat with Mr. Kelly, morning Heather. Just having a wee blether with a guy on here last night, and he said, about walking up here in the winter. And I've already started thinking about that. Dependent on where I am with my work, etc., walking round here continually is definitely on my list. And I even noticed last night when I was out, it was starting to dim. Good morning. There we go. Okay. Wonder what he's looking at. What are you looking at, mister? Wait? What? What is it? What is it? You just want to walk, don't you? Right, good morning. Friday. Here we are. Back up here. You may have noticed I haven't titled the name of this vlog this morning. I've not put any title towards it because I'm just going to be straight. I had absolutely no inspiration or creativity towards it at all. And as I have aforementioned, I do not do any research for any of these vlogs. I just simply speak about what comes to mind, but usually I have a flavour at least, or some kind of ingredient when I'm making the soup. And this morning I noticed my mind wrestling with itself because I couldn't think of anything to speak about at all. And I was going over previous vlogs, what we've spoke about this week, what we've spoke about this week. And is there anything out of what we've spoke about this week that I could adapt and add to and give more meaning? Take it a little bit differently in the process. It's got to be perfectly straight. I had absolutely no inspiration whatsoever. But I thought, I'll still come on. I'll find something to blether about. Something will come into my head. It's rather than forcing it. I guess one of the things that I spoke about yesterday around about movement, and then Karela, my buddy, came in, and from a kinesiology perspective, we were thinking about movement, and then movement, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about situations that are out with our control and situations that are within our control. Some things just came into my mind as I started walking and talking. Yesterday I went up to Callander in Scotland, little place northwest of Stirling, as I had bought a large oak whiskey barrel so that I can do my ice baths at home for the mornings, which I can't make it to the River Clyde. I bought it before blooming lockdown, and that was me just getting an opportunity to go up and get it. But I went up, and the conversation that we were having in the van was around this, right? Let's see if we can make some sense out of this and see if I could even look at it from a neuroscientific or a psychological perspective and put a slant on it, right? So this was the topic. Questioning why, when we are on our game, right? So let's just say that when we're on our game, don't challenge my use of language. I'm accepting that it could be the wrong use of words. But let's just say when you're on your game, you are winning, right? And when you're off your game, you're losing, right? But even when you're losing, you're winning, and even when you're winning, you're losing. So, we could debate semantics around that forever and ever. But just to keep this simple, the wee vlog walking around the side of the Clyde this morning, when you're up, things seem to have less of a stranglehold over you, right? Things don't seem to... You don't have a chink in your armour. Things don't get in. Things don't fester. Hurts heal quicker. Things don't become septic quite the same. What I'm meaning by that is So translating this to myself, as I said to you in previous vlogs, one of the neurotransmitters that I am low in, or have been low in, which would have been a direct effect of my anxiety, undiagnosed and untreated anxiety disorder, would have been that I was low in GABA. I was probably low in serotonin and low in dopamine as well, but GABA I was certainly low in, and the contraindication of that meant that I could have been susceptible to rumination, or indeed even a sort of obsessive compulsive, but I wouldn't say sort of compulsive like thinking or compulsive like actions, right? And only when you can start to regulate your own biochemistry and your own neurotransmitters more effectively, then we can start to have heal. So, long unwinded way, this is how I put it and how I see it, right? When you're on your game, right, when you're good, when you're eating well, if that's something that works for you, when you're exercising sufficiently, when you have a good balance of socialisation, friends, trust, experiences that all bring value and meaning into your life, right? Let's just say that that's when you're above the water, right? You're above the programming, if you like. You're not allowing your subconscious or indeed unconscious beliefs to perhaps have as much power over you as what they would have if you're under the water. But this is what we both conversation yesterday in the van, going to pick up our whiskey barrels, right, and have a little walk around nature and do what we were doing yesterday, right? This is how it feels to me. See, when you start to go slightly below the water, when you start to go slightly below the threshold in your physicality and your vision and your creativity and your energy and your enthusiasm, etc., when you start to go slightly below the water, isn't it funny that the thoughts and experiences that you seek out in your natural environment, or this virtual reality holiday that we inhabit, is almost weighted with lead, and those thoughts and experiences want to attach themselves to you to pull you to the bottom of the ocean, right? And how quickly you sink, how quickly you go back to that, what would be a word for it, negative experience. Now, when you're above the water and you're managing to tread and go, well, it's not treading water, it's actually when you're above the water, when you're walking on the water, that you are less inclined to get caught up in drama, you're less inclined to get caught up in negativity, you're less inclined to get caught up in repetition type behaviours, compulsive thoughts, rumination, thinking over and over and over again, then trying to strategically plan how you're going to get that person back, or how you're going to react or respond to them in the future, or how your boundaries are going to be in order to navigate a situation from an experience that's now been and done, it's now gone, it's happened in the past, right? And it's keeping that experience alive is you, by your rumination in the mind, an obsession, and perhaps negative, angry, hostile, whatever that might be. And when we get to that point, what we start to do is it's almost like we're drinking the poison and expecting that other situation to die, whether that's a people, place, thing, an experience, or I wish I'd done that differently, I wish I'd done that better, right? And we get ourselves to a point where what it is that we attempt to do is we attempt to drink the poison and expect the other person to die. So the thing about it is, in order to stay, again metaphorically, above the water where you're walking on it, in order to be in your game, you have to take responsibility and accountability for your own health, your own mental health, and what goes on between this 6 inches between your ears, right? So what is between these 6 inches between your ears, right? Well, it's your brain, right? Your brain's is it that creates your reality, which is your brain, right? So if you take the top off my head, up, it's not a load of vapours like the genie in the bottle that comes out. There's actually a massive muscle, like any other muscle in the body, and it can be trained for positive or negative experiences, right? But the brain is a very, very complicated organ, right? Very complicated indeed, and we could spend 100 hours just talking about that in itself. But reducing it down very simply, the brain is responsible for three main areas. Let's keep it simple and keep it real. What's your brain utilised for? You're utilised for three things. It's utilised for movement that I spoke about yesterday, right? And then you can put derivatives of that movement into... Oh, bag's bouncing about, right? Good morning. Morning, Laura. Hope you're well. Right, so your brain is responsible for three key areas, right? Movement, right? Perception. I don't know if you're able to still hear me. Sorry, I lost signal there. Yeah, sorry, I lost signal coming round there. It's funny, my phone's been losing signal in different areas. Right, okay, your brain's responsible for three areas. That's about the third time I've said that now, maybe fourth. Movement, perception, and imagination, right? Now, imagination is something that Ralph doesn't have that we've got, right? And it's key. So your brain's responsible for movement. We're meant to move, right? Your brain's set up in a way to create movement. So if you want a healthy brain, keeping it simple, what would be the three ways, if that's the three main jobs of your brain? Moving and how you move. And different types of movement has different effects on different areas in your brain. Yoga has a different... if you were looking at your brain in an fMRI scan, right? And let's just imagine you could get a Bluetooth, right, moving fMRI, which I don't think they've invented yet because they're still quite big cylinder things that you've got to lie in. But let's just imagine you could, right? Humour me. And humour me when I'm thinking about this, right? Thinking as I'm walking here, right? So yoga will ignite a different brain region than, let's say, running on a treadmill. Running on a treadmill will light up a different part of your brain than this hike that I'm doing beside water and amongst the trees, right? Doing a bi-rhythms dance or five rhythms dance or salsa dance or any different types of dance and movement, that will light up and inspire different types of brain circuit regions. And also, if you were to do high intensity exercise, that's going to light up a different part of your brain than yoga, than dance, than any of what I've mentioned before, right? Perception, right? This is the tricky one because this ties in with psychology, counselling, psychology, etc., because your perception is a direct experience of you being a passive learner in your earliest of development, right? So I speak a lot about Freud, and the minute I speak about Freud, a lot of people switch off. But about 15 years ago, I went completely down the rabbit hole with Freud and just ingested about everything that I could get my hands on in the Mitchell Library, long before Google. And I absolutely dived into him. And during that period, I was in psychoanalysis bi-tri-weekly, depending on the therapist's availability, right? So I was in psychoanalysis for 2 years, bi-weekly / tri-weekly, and totally and utterly submerged myself in Freud. Now, Freud is an absolute genius, right? I would defend him to the end. Now, yes, a lot of what he came up with was wrong, right? Looking back to when he was right enough, like 1880, 1900s, etc., right? A lot of what Freud came up with was wrong, but a lot of what Freud came up with was still pioneering to this day, over and above our understanding of science. He understood it, and he understood the mind and the concepts of the subconscious and unconscious mind far superior than anybody else that has preceded him to date. Yes, he took a massive amount of cocaine, and yes, he slept with his clients. But there's a lot of public figures right now in this time continuum that's done a whole lot worse than Freud, and we seem to have accepted them in a position of power. right? So, perception. You want to understand about perception, from where I'm coming from, it's Freudian, right? Because your perception, so those that have just joined, your brain's responsible for three main areas: movement, perception and imagination. So we've done the movement, we're on perception, and your perception and how you view your narrative, how you experience your reality, how your holodeck has came into a 3, 4, 5 dimensional experience is completely and utterly a cause and effect of your childhood. And I am a great believer that even from conception and possibly before, we start to formulate a reality based on the biochemical experience that our mother was having as we were being incubated in this reality. If mummy had a very stressful pregnancy, there was a lot of violence or drug use within the house, or the mum had lost her job, or the dad had lost their job, there was poverty, there was disharmony, there was even a split up in the relationship during pregnancy. Whatever way you want to look at that, that child, before it's came to the world, has already experienced that. Now, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, there is a book by, Janov, 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 and it was written in 1960, 63, let's call it, I guess, right? Try to sound bloody clever and giving you dates about Janov, the story of the unborn child, right? And that gives us a great understanding from a non-neuroscientific perspective, because there wasn't any of the scientific artefact that we have today to experience it. But Janov was doing experiments with the unborn child with using sort of ultrasound technology that was probably as far-reaching as he could have got back in those days. And that child was in utero. Mummy would have a smoke of a cigarette, and you can hear through the ultrasound the child almost giving off what would sound like a scream, right? The child was in pain. The child was not having a jolly around about that experience. So our perception and how we're experiencing this reality is a direct effect of how we were conditioned and how our narrative scripts and schemas have came into formulation over at least probably, people would say, I would say for 7 years, right? There is different evidence in that. I would encourage you to do your own research. Don't go mapping that as a right and a question if you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? But I love how the Jesuits used to say, give me a child till 7 and I'll give you the man, right? How you create the environment, experience, the tones, the algorithms, the trillions of pieces of encoded information. It's beyond trillions. There's probably not even a mathematical equation for the amount of pieces of coded information that the child, as a passive learner, because that's all you were doing as a child, was just wandering about, looking at your environment, taking all these pieces of binary information in and coding and creating the major high-end computer system that then creates this holodeck, this matrix of reality of which we inhabit. And then we go through life and we start blaming the matrix, we start blaming the world for the experience of which we're having. But somewhere at an unconscious, non-conscious, pre-conscious and subconscious experience, we are creating the reality of which we're inhabiting. Right, that's 2, that's perception. 3, imagination. Imagination, as Einstein said, is more powerful than intelligence, because the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. And if we can start to imagine a more fruitful, more exciting, more expansive reality or holodeck that we wish to inhabit, we have the power in that to control it, right? So when we look at trauma, which is majorly difficult, and how, so certain things in my life that I've got fixated on, right, is car accidents, right? I'm not going to get into that too much, but I've had a few car accidents, right? And underneath this beard, there's a fair few scars on my face from bouncing myself off the steering wheel, going through the windscreens, coming off the motorbikes and smashing myself up pretty badly. And something that I have formulated and found within those experiences, right, is how time can distort, right? How everything becomes into slow motion and how reality bends and changes, right? And then me being me, I want to find out why that is, right? Is it a spiritual experience? Is it, what's going on? And there's a chemical, a brain-derived chemical, which happens called neurooxytocin, right? And that's like a focus chemical, and that's released from a part of the brain called the neuropericillid, right? So there's a little part in the back of the brain, neuropericillid, and then you get acetylcholine, right? That's a chemical, and when those two things are activated, time completely distorts, we get into slow motion, right? And we become hyper-focused. Now, the trick is being able to recreate that experience without having a car accident so that you can be the best version of yourself in this reality, and it's got very little to do with goal setting. It's just a small part of it, because what we've got to do is we've got to get ourselves in alignment, both chemically and with our focus and with our experience, in order for us to manifest the reality of which we want to do. And I started thinking about that. I've never even bloody watched it, The Secret, right? And how people are doing, what is it? I don't know, abundance exercises or something. You get these clowns, right, that are doing all these workshops on how to create abundance, right? Now, that's been going on for a wee while, right? And I look around about me and I still see folk that are skint and they're going to these workshops all the time, right? And I'm looking and I'm going, right, why are you still skint? Why are you not creating abundance, right? Now, asking thy shall receive. Why are you not receiving? Right? So imagination, we have the ability to imagine a perceived or unperceived environment based on what's going on within the confines of this brain, right? That's where we differ from Ralph, my dog. So you have at your fingertips to be able to utilise your brain to its full potential and start to use its creative, imaginary senses so that you can start to have a better, happier life. Now, like positive thinking, which I don't agree with, and I'm going to be crude here and say it as I see it, positive thinking is a load of garbage, because basically what you're doing is you're trying to plant a rose bush in a 2-ton pile of horse shit, right? It's going to look quite pretty, but you've got to be very, very close to it to even smell the rose, because the smell of the horse shit is going to overpower it, right? That horse shit is our unconscious mind, and where trauma and negative experience has been encoded into the framework of this computer system, right? So, imagination, what has to happen, and I've explained this in other vlogs, is we have to delete, objectively see the trauma from a distance rather than being in it, move that to the right, swipe right, then swoop up or to the left, bringing in a new and positive experience. So, yesterday, I went down a hill on my mountain bike really, really fast, and I remembered cycling up it, and I was thinking to myself as I was cycling up it, right, I'm so unfit, right, that's what I'm thinking. But as I'm going up it, I'm like, this is going to be really cool coming down it, right? So when I got the experience to come back down it, I actually took off like a 14-year-old on my BMX and completely launched and took over and jumped this bridge, right? You know, and in my imagination, the film crew and all that were at the other side of the bridge, and everybody's cheering, yay, right? And that all went on. But what that gave me, right, was a newfound experience, excitement, connection, love, appreciation, whatever you want to call it. It was all of the above rolled into one. So, last night, before I went to my bed, or whilst I was in my bed, I was thinking about some of the things that are causing me stress, some of the people, places and things that I still have a negative association to. I brought that into my awareness through the eyes of the objection, through the eyes of the perceiver, perceiving it, looking at it objectively, right? I allowed that to be swiped like my iPhone to the side, and then I brought in the feelings, the memory of the feelings, not necessarily what it was like flying down the road, but I brought in the feelings of the experience on the mountain bike and the excitement, etc, 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 and I loaded my system up with that, and I filled my fabric of my being up with that experience. And when I woke up first thing this morning, how did I feel? Great. I felt great. Now, it works if you work it, it won't if you don't. Now, the very last conversation that I had last night was with a chap that has lovely guy, really nice fellow, right? Such a sweet guy from a really nice family. And unfortunately, he's been dancing with drugs, and quite addictive and harmful drugs as well. And he's in and out and in and out and in and out. And we had a conversation about the light versus the dark. and how when things are good and going great in his life and he's exercising and he's drug-free, it feels very unfamiliar to him. He's always expecting something bad to happen. So rather than something external pulling the rug out from underneath his feet, he then goes and sabotages the positive experience by going and dancing back with drugs. Now, in the fellowship, whatever it is that you're doing, personal training, listening to these vlogs, right, in a relationship, whatever it is that you're doing, in my experience, it works if you work it. It won't if you don't. Now, we started off this conversation around about he who never had anything to talk about, the wee blether. See? Just start rambling. Stuff just keeps coming out my mouth. Don't even know where it's coming from. But above the water, below the water, when you're working it, when you're feeling the connection, the joy, the Spirit of the Lord flying through your system, right? Your wings are more protective. There are less chinks in your armour. The minute you stop working it and become complacent and think, I don't need this any longer, the arrogance comes in. Oh, I forgot to take my antidepressant today, or I feel quite good, I'm just going to leave it. And then 2 days becomes a week, and the next thing you know, you're having a rattle from hell. You're shaking in the floor and sweating profusely and feeling sick. That's not clever, right? If you think, I'm feeling pretty good right now, I'm complacent, I don't need to go to the gym, right? And then a day becomes a week. Before you know it, you're back underneath the water again. Same with the fellowship. If you've got an alcohol, narcotics, whatever it is, and you're going to your meetings and you slip and you miss one meeting, missing one meeting becomes 2 meetings, 2 meetings becomes 4 meetings, 4 meetings become 8 meetings, you're on the slippery slope to relapse. That's the way it works. It works if you work it, it won't if you don't. This is a constant work in progress in order to stay above the water. It does not come for free, right? Now, this is a daily for me. I have to be at the computer, I have to be online. There is no exceptions for 9 a.m. this morning, right? That's the way it is. Yesterday I was a wee bit more fluid because on Wednesday I had a cancellation. I brought an appointment forward to Wednesday, which opened up Friday for me, which enabled me to go and get my whiskey barrels and go and have a wee mountain cycle up round the side of the lochs and all the rest of it, right? Now, it works if you work it, it won't if you don't. I absolutely mean that. Whatever it is that you're focusing on, as long as you're focusing on it, right, and you're not going into complacence, arrogance, pride and ego doesn't get in the way, and you think that you're all right. We are never going to be all right, right? We never get to a point where we're just all right and we can manage. That's not possible. So this is a morning process for me. This is something that I have to do every morning in order to keep myself above the water, right? That's where I want to go. And I notice very quickly when I stop doing all the processes that I've got, which is connecting, which is groups, which is etc, 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 I notice that the neighbour parks their car 2 inches southeast instead of southwest, which its nose is just starting to point towards my parking space, which isn't my parking space because it's communal, but my brain's creating now a whole series of events that then I start to fixate and ruminate on that. When I start to fixate and ruminate on that, where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from a place of anxiety. Why have I got anxiety? Doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's because my childhood was like Beirut. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't know what it could have been. Maybe it was nothing to do with my childhood. Maybe some past life I was just really anxious, right? And I've come into this world anxious. Who knows? Doesn't actually matter. Acceptance. I've got anxiety. I was late on in life before I realised that. I'm not going to medicate it because personally speaking, I don't want to use pharmaceuticals unless my arm's hanging off, right? How do I manage that? I manage that by taking accountability for my own mental and emotional health. What are the processes that I need to do in order to do that? Well, I've got my own. You need to find yours, right? One of the processes is this. The next process, before I go to my bed at night, I always replace a negative experience or something that's gnawing at me with a positive experience, but not just in thought, totally in feeling. We can become the masters of our own biochemical factory. We can stand round the corner like the chalice, right? We can stand round the chalice of boiling chemicals, and we can start to become the alchemist of our own mind. We can start to totally and utterly channel these neuroreceptors into whatever way we want to look at it, right? And isn't it funny when you start to get up, look at all the people, places and things that come out the woodwork, because what they've got is an unconscious association that they want what you've got, they want to pull you down. Now, something that came to my mind, if you train to be a lifeguard, right, and there was a boat wreck and some little 5'2" woman, frail in size and stature, had been at sea for a number of hours and had totally and utterly went into a reptilian brain, had lost all cognitive thought, and all that they were doing was trying to survive. In order to survive, 6'2" Ross, strapping lad, jumps into the ocean to save them. What is that person going to do to me? That person is going to pull me under the ocean and drown me, right? They don't mean to do that. They're not a murderer. But all that they've got in their mind is survival. Now, that's what our own thoughts do to us the minute we're not working our process, the minute that we're not in our game. These neurochemicals that are in survival chemicals, what they want to do is they take log, they're like a jigsaw piece into our neurochemistry, and boom, they start to attach ourselves to us, and their main objective is to pull us underneath the water and sink us. Now, that's within your control. There's a lot of things in our life that are out with our control, but we might think right now that 75% of our life is out with our control and only 25% of that is within our control. Look differently. Look differently at the experience, right? What if 75% of this reality was within your control and 25% of it was not within your control? How would your reality look? Isn't that an exciting concept? Isn't that an exciting thing that you can take charge of your mind? Now, that's me, Friday morning. I wish you a fantastic, pleasant weekend. I'm taking the weekend to... Good morning, sir. How are you? Thank you. No worries, buddy. Enjoy your run. Now, enjoy your weekend. Have a fantastic weekend. I hope you've got some exciting things planned because we're out of lockdown. I noticed that pubs and clubs and restaurants and everything like that's open. I am going to be going into Glasgow to have a pizza and have a walk around the park and just absorb the city because I've missed that. And I hope that you've got some exciting things planned. I hope that you've got enough energy after your maybe first week back at work to actually take some time for yourselves and get yourself doing some positive ING experiences: gardening, fishing, swimming, cycling, not drinking, smoking. Good morning. Drugging, snorting, right? Negative INGs versus positive INGs. I wish you all the very best. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning into the vlogs. Thanks for those that shared the vlogs. Thanks for those that are subscribing to the vlogs. Thank you for your constructive criticism. And I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate those that have, and those that are texting me and getting some benefits from it. And I also appreciate those of you that have texted me and said, "You're a fucking stoter," right? Because that gives me time to reflect and grow. Because if we're not growing, we're dying. Positive ING, growing. Negative ING, dying. Right, listen, have a good one. Wish you all the very best. You take care and God bless. Have a fantastic weekend. See you on Monday.